Welcome to the Ag Commodity Corner Plus podcast. It is August 29th, week 24.
Hey, everybody.
And our title today is the U.S. flash drought, worst in 133 to 160 years, plus disease, taking a bite out of U.S. corn and soybean crops. Let's have a quick look at the weekly summary. It was month end, but that wasn't the case for corn. Corn futures actually closed up a dime for the week. That was for September, but December corn closed at $4.20. Remember, if you're watching our podcasts, don't forget to subscribe. But if you saw our past podcast, we said the ceiling, short-term ceiling, on December corn was $4.17, and we're breaking that. And there's a test. What's the next level? Do you guys know? Send me some comments, and I'll give you a free subscription. Anybody gets it right. You guys need to know these levels, or you're going to do a poor job of marketing. Soybean oil, down $3.37 for the week. It weighed on canola, but again, I think long-term, we're still in that uptrend. This is just a correction. And of course, Stats Canada came out with their updated July production report. We'll get into that, but that weighed on canola futures as well. And then we got livestock still trending higher. CME lean hogs again. In last week's podcast, we said that the USDA acknowledged that PRRS is a problem for the fourth quarter. And so hogs continued to rally, now testing those old highs in August and July. And I think if we can get past Labor Day, we could actually see October and December just continue to trade higher. Cattle, new record highs. Dow, also record highs earlier in the week. We didn't close there. S&P, a record high above 6,500. NASDAQ came shy of a record, even though NVIDIA reported earnings up and revenue up 56%. I don't know what investors want, but after 9 quarters, that $4.5 trillion company's growth is slowing. Oh, excuse me, but 56, I guess, is not enough. And then Bitcoin, a little bit of a correction here. Not really, no reason why, but back down to about 109. I think for many, this could pose as a buying opportunity long term. So let's get into it. So let's start with this flash drought.
Well, Mo, start with the question. Are we getting a shave off from the top end of yields like we had last year? So a flash drought, like you see there on the screen, has erupted towards the eastern corn belt, and basically it's eating into yields as of now. And there could be further issues down the line as well, especially for that soybean crop. What do you think, Paul?
It was a dry August for the Eastern Corn Belt. It looks like a second consecutive year of a poor finish, unfortunately. It looks like an early harvest for both corn and beans.
And this is the precipitation map. All of that eastern part looks really dry.
Yeah, you can see here that Ohio, for the month of August, is the driest in 133 years. Who would have thought? Okay, so everybody's talking 89-year drought cycle at the beginning of the year. Guess what? Maybe this is the start. Maybe it was delayed for a year. Maybe La Nina is returning. Some of this Eastern Corn Belt are the driest in 10 to 15 years. Well, the top 10, 15-year driest years in 150 to 160 years. To me, this is your setup for the 89-year drought cycle. We did not think that the 89-year drought cycle was going to happen this year, but it can happen next year. Sometimes history repeats itself, but doesn't necessarily rhyme.
And this is on top of the disease pressure that we spoke about in the last few podcasts. So southern rust, especially southern rust, has been expanding across some of those regions in the Midwest. And it seems as if fields without fungicide usage have been seeing more of it expanding, and moisture levels for a lot of those crops have been dropping because of these disease pressures.
So you can see how in some areas that southern rust has expanded as you get into Michigan versus 8/11/25 versus 8/26/25. But there's also did fungicide help limit the losses? Maybe, but there's also trade talk now that anthracnose is showing up in corn. So we just need more diseases. Anyways, I think crops are still going to be big. The early harvest is better than expected. So, we could shave 1% to 4% off the top end. But to answer your question from the start, I think it's a smaller crop. But just a warning, we've warned you in past podcasts about this. For the September crop report, it's all about ears and pod counts. Record ears, record pod counts. But for the October crop report, it's all about weight, pod weight, kernel weight. So, a warning to everybody, don't be surprised if USDA shows a 190 yield on corn. It could show a 454 on beans. And then maybe in the October report, we start to see some of that damage from disease and maybe drought. But USDA could wait till the final report in January. And so the USDA may gift farmers another gift like the last January. But sign up to our program because we can't give everything away in this podcast, but we'll give you our 2 cents of where we think prices are going by the first quarter of 2025. And this is critical because you guys need to make some decisions here as you start to harvest the 25 crop.
Well, did you just say 190 bushels per acre corn for the U.S. this year?
I did. Yes, sir. 190. Look, on August 1st, everybody was saying I was record crop, best crop ever in 50 years. So a month, roll forward a month later, not so much. So, but again, USDA is slow to adjust and they could show that.
Sticking with the issues and just expanding on what we just discussed, that drought, this is the latest drought monitor map, and as of now, almost 30% of the U.S. Midwest is in drought, and this compares to the end of last month, when we had less than 10% in drought.
Yeah, so the drought's expanding, unfortunately, and it doesn't look good. I think this flash strike drought is expected to last through mid-September. There's also some talk of a soft frost next week in the northern plains, but I'm not sure it's going to do a lot of damage.
We had Stats Canada come out with their usual satellite/model-based crop estimates for this year. So on the canola side, they're expecting a crop of 19.937 million metric tons versus what trade expected at 20.3, and this compares to last year at 19.5. More, do you think it's that big a crop?
No, remember, this is satellite imagery. This is like the USDA August crop report, where it was satellite imagery and farmer survey. And this was in July. And since then, there's been a lot of moisture in the Canadian prairies, mostly in central to southern Alberta and maybe southern Saskatchewan. A little late for a lot of the crops. I'm hearing reports of harvest on wheat. Again, it's all over the map from 30 to 40 bushels to 63. It's very difficult to predict what the production is. I think Stats Canada, just like the USDA, may have projected an overproduction in 25. We need to get deep into harvest to figure it out. But, the only thing that saved the Western Canadian prairie crops are the lack of heat, as opposed to Ontario, which had a ton of heat. So, I'm not sure it's an average crop. I still think it's a below average crop, but we're going to need more time to figure that out. Don't forget to try our program. Join the marketing club. Our key insights this week was the drought in Ontario because of the 2025 Great Ontario Yield Tour. It was a 10-year boots on the ground insight. Again, there's a lot of farmers in southwestern Ontario that have backyarditis. They think Ontario's fine. Well, when I look at my crop, it looks good. But even their own crop that looks above average is not as good as you think it is. It's definitely not the last 2 years' record crop. So a poor U.S. finish equals higher prices long term. But sign up to the program and we'll share that insight with you.
Let's get into that crop tour. We concluded it last week, and yesterday we had a big event at Woodstock. It rained yesterday. The crops could have used that rain, at least in the east, a little earlier. What have we concluded from the tour, Mo?
Well, it's obviously a smaller crop. The 178.93, that compares to 204 the last 2 years, which was a record for corn, and then beans coming in at 46.61. The corn crop is down more than the soybean crop, but they're both below the 10-year average, unfortunately. And, we got to trust the app. We got to trust the crop tour with the numbers. We could still shave 10% off of these numbers with a poor finish, so it may not be over just yet. And then you can see the county averages here. Again, a lot of counties are much lower than last year. So basically, I don't know if everybody knows where London, Ontario is, Ingersoll. There's a highway called Highway 19. Anything east, south, and north, there's a lot of hot pockets, regions that are just too dry. As you go further out east, I don't know if you guys have ever seen maybe some of the U.S. farmers and some of those in 2012 and maybe some Western Canadian farmers in 2021 saw some dead crops. We saw dead corn and soybean crops in Eastern Ontario. In other words, they were 3 foot tall, no ears. The beans were dead, but the weeds were still growing. So that's the type of year we've seen here. There's a drought in Canada. It's very regional. Even in Quebec, it was quite dry. So there's 3 yield zones in Ontario. There's the southwestern Ontario that's holding up the yield. There's central Ontario, which is very dry. Still a crop, but it's smaller. And then the eastern Ontario is probably the worst. In Quebec, this is from GrainWiz and Jean-Philippe Boucher, one of our friends out there that's been doing a crop tour for about 13 years. I actually started the Ontario crop tour because of him, so I'm going to blame him for all the work. That old saying, be careful what you wish for. But anyways, I've said it before. I enjoy the tour, but I also dread it because it's a lot of work. Quebec is the same as Ontario. It's going to be below the 10-year average for both corn and beans, 156 on corn, 42.9 on the soybeans. They had about 75 to 100 millimeters less precipitation from April to the end of August versus normal. And again, rain makes grain. And when you don't have rain, it doesn't matter how good the genetics are or the equipment, it's going to be something smaller.
And also, more, I guess it ties into, that Eastern Corn Belt drought in the U.S. as well, if you trace it downwards.
Yeah, so we're going to be short out east, potentially, corn. Again, we suggested that could help basis. So if you want that insight and where we think basis is going, sign up to the program.
Moving on, and there's no way we can escape geopolitics. This is the latest. So China's trade rep, Li, is in Washington this week for discussions with U.S. officials. And he will meet with officials in Washington after leading a delegation to Canada, which was from August 24th till the 27th.
Yeah, so remember we were been connecting the dots on this U.S.-China trade deal over the last couple of podcasts, maybe the last month. So this is just another connecting of that dot. This is a positive sign. We haven't heard anything on the meeting in Washington with Lee, but hopefully we're getting closer to a U.S.-China trade deal.
And sticking with China, the U.S. soybean export demand is 29% behind last year, but it remains strong if you take out China. Demand to China is the only thing that's terrible, almost non-existent. New crop bean sales to all destinations as of August the 21st were the second highest in recent records after 2018, which was when we had the first trade war.
Yeah, so the U.S. soybean export pace for 25-26 new crop is behind by about 29% versus last year. Again, China is at zero, but there's 40% of those new crop sales are to unknown. In the past, unknown was China. Who changed the rules along the way? Who said that unknown? I don't know who unknown is. I mean, my theory is that I think we're still selling to China. Nobody's going to admit it, including the USDA. I don't know why the USDA just doesn't tell us who it is. But it's just the way they've set it up, the legislation, the rules. But I think it's going to South Korea, backdoored into China. So that's my personal opinion. But China is, because of politics and trade war, is buying more soybeans from Uruguay and Argentina to fill the lack of the U.S. soybeans, the gap. By the way, U.S. soybeans are 20% cheaper than Brazil. And yet China is still telling their buyers not to buy from the U.S. Trump, please give U.S. farmers a gift. Trust in Trump, right?
In those, the northern plains farmers are seeing soybean prices below $9, basically in the red. A lack of demand, especially for exports to China, is contributing to all of that because normally they fill up their requirements for September and October, but with China missing from action, basically a lot of it possibly is coming from South America and going into China.
Yeah, so I don't know. We've been talking about how we think maybe a phase 2 trade deal might happen by mid-November, but will the U.S. farmer experience a winter without China? That is still a possibility. I could be out of touch with this or out to lunch with this, but unfortunately, Northern Plain farmers, because this time of the year we usually ship soybeans to China through the PNW, and we're not doing that. It's weighing on basis as much as $1.50 or more under futures with an 8 in front of futures.
Sticking with exports, while the soybean situation is not that great, the U.S. new crop or the new marketing year corn situation is basically like a runaway train. So you've got new crop commitments at a healthy 18.775 million metric tons, which is almost double last year's pace, Mo.
Yeah, 90 degrees to the upside. Look at that. We're on record pace. Last week it was 58% better than a year ago. Now 99%, almost double. So definitely one reason why corn futures are moving higher. We closed at 420 on December. You've got lower potential production because of the flash drought and disease, and you got better demand. So that's a good news story here, short term.
Let's finish off with the latest CFTC update. This is as of today afternoon. So you've got corn still net short, but significantly better off than the previous week. So we've got net managed money funds buying about 34,000 almost into corn. Soybean situation as well, another over 20,000 bought into soybeans, taking that position up to 20,818. And the wheats also saw net buying. Canola, on the other hand, a little more selling there to 29,200.
Yeah, so after this week's action, I think the funds in real time are probably only short, maybe, especially today. With that rally, I'm guessing maybe we're down to about 80,000 short contracts. Did we add to the soybean long position? Maybe a little bit. I don't know if it was a lot because we were consolidating this week. So maybe long 30,000, and then the funds continued to liquidate that long position in canola. After this week's collapse, I got to think we're flat on canola. So could they go short? Yeah, but I don't think there's enough there to go excessively short. At some point, I think the funds have to come back and start buying that canola. So we'll have to wait and see. Until next time, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Take care.
Bye, guys.